back up in the mix, and I think we're going to be welcoming our guest.
Hi, Seth Itzkan. Are you there?
Yes. Hi. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Good morning, Seth. Good to have you here with us on GreenZine, and it's a good connection. Great to have you.
Great. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So Seth and I have known each other. He is the founder or co-founder of Soil for Climate. And he's next Tuesday is going to be doing a presentation at Middlebury College, trying to get the message out. And the title of it is The Role of Ruminants in Reversing Global Warming. And that's not what we hear about ruminants and beef in general. And we want to dig into that and see just what's going on in that thinking. So Seth, can you start off by kind of telling us a little bit of background, how you got, I mean, you're deep into this, and how did that happen?
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say it's an honor and pleasure to be on your show. I've been hearing about it for a long time. And, so anyway, I'm just very happy to be here. In regards to this particular topic, I've been what you could call a traditional climate activist for most of my adult life. I mean, since I was even aware of this topic. And I sort of look at sort of climate activism awareness as sort of like three phases. The first phase is even acknowledging that it's a problem, right? And there's a lot of people who are still in denial that global warming even is a problem. And then the second phase is sort of activism around reducing emissions. And I don't know, 99.8%, just a huge percent of all of discussion and activism around global warming is around reducing emissions, which absolutely it has to be. We have to do that. But there's an evolving arm, thread, whatever metaphor you want to use, of the climate movement, which recognizes that just reducing emissions isn't good enough. We're already way past the amount of carbon that's in the atmosphere that is sustainable for human civilization. And we have to be removing huge amounts of carbon from the atmosphere. And so this is sort of like the drawdown phase, if you will, or approach or narrative. So the first is even acknowledging that global warming is a problem. The second is focusing on emissions reduction. But now the third is drawdown, sequestration, literally getting the carbon that's already in the air out. And so then the question comes up, well, where's it going to go? So it naturally dissolves in oceans, a certain percentage of it, and becomes carbonic acid, which is a bad thing. It kills reefs and other stuff, and it's temporary because it will eventually come back out in the atmosphere. So you really need sort of a permanent home, and for the most part, that permanent home is going to be soil or biology in general.
And
soil.
And Seth, do you have a figure for how much of our greenhouse gases have come from the messing with soil that humans have done, the overall farming and forestry removal and so forth?
That's actually a great question. If you don't mind, I don't want to throw out actual specific numbers right now. I don't have those charts in front of me, but in addition to burning fossil fuels, I mean, everyone understands that when we began burning fossil fuels, that was a clear sudden thrust of CO2 into the atmosphere. But we've been adding CO2 into the atmosphere for much longer than that. Plowing and the degradation of natural ecosystems creates CO2. The CO2 levels have been going up since long before we started burning fossil fuels, and and so they need to come down anyway. Even before we started burning fossil fuels, we were actually creating global warming. It just wasn't as fast or as severe, but we were creating it. And so basically we're soil for climate just because soil is such a big reservoir of carbon. It's just such a massive reservoir. It's not the only one. Forests, of course, it could be called forest for climate, which is completely legitimate. And it's not one or the other. It just so happens to be that most of the biggest area of the landed part of the earth, the biggest ecosystem type is some sort of grassland. And grasslands are a major reservoir of carbon and soils in particular. And so humans have been more or less degrading soil for literally thousands of years. And so we've been contributing to global warming by diminishing the quality of our soil for thousands of years. And so soil for climate is just focused on that part of it. And it would be complementary. You could call it climate, you could call it forest for climate or wetlands for climate. It's all valid. All those ecosystems are necessary to keep a healthy climate. But soil is such a big part of it. And all of our agriculture, of course, is more or less on soil and is essentially, degrading the soil. And so we need to create agriculture and ranching in a way that restores soil carbon. And so that's the focus of the organization, Soil for Climate, specifically to focus on that.
So what are the role of ruminants in all of this, and why are we, if we do a good job moving to no-till agriculture and maybe planting cover crops between while we're still doing industrial straight line planting of just one crop at a time, how do we, that's supposed to put a little bit of carbon back in the ground. Where do animals come into this?
Yeah, so, the question of industrial agriculture, is really sort of fundamental. But what people need to realize is that most of the terrestrial part of the earth that is or was a quote-unquote grassland or a semi-arid area isn't really suitable for for traditional agriculture anyway. These are drier areas, and they co-evolved with the grazing animals, and particularly with grazing ruminants. And so grazing ruminants in large numbers are essential for the vitality and health of these drier ecosystems, these semi-arid seasonal rainfall ecosystems. Grasslands of various types are the dominant ecosystem on the terrestrial part of the planet. On the landed part of the planet, so I'm not talking about oceans, obviously, which are the dominant ecosystem type on the surface of the planet, but on the landed part of the planet, on the continents, grasslands of some type are the dominant ecosystem. And that's where most of the soil carbon is. And those systems co-evolved with massive herds of grazing animals, and particularly with ruminants. And so grazing animals and ruminants are essential for soil health. And they're essential for keeping the carbon in the ground and for getting it back into the ground. And I realize this is counterintuitive because so much of today's management of ruminants is contributing to the problem of land degradation. But that's that's the result of human behavior. you know, without humans, the animals will still be there, and many more of them, and in greater densities, but they'd be moving over large areas. And so the role of regenerative grazing is to replicate with domestic animals the behavior of wild animals. So the net result is the same. You still get a healthy grassland, you get a healthy soil, and what that basically means is large amounts of animals in a compact herd moving frequently and not, quote, overgrazing, but also not doing under impact. So you got these two phenomena here, one of which people can understand. It seems sort of obvious. Overgrazing would mean you just keep eating the same plant. But there's also this impact that humans have created called it's called sort of under impact, where there actually aren't enough animals. Or you'll just have like a few animals and they just keep eating the same pieces of grass. So they're simultaneously overgrazing and under-impacting at the same time. And you see, what nature wants is a lot of animals together for a short period of time. So, and that impact of lots of animals hitting the ground in a concentrated way, turning it up, leaving the dung, not overgrazing, because remember, there's predators, there's their own dung. They want to keep moving. So in the natural system, the herd will take a bite or two and keep moving. They won't eat something down to the ground.
Right. Hey,
so the regenerative grazing tries to replicate that type of wild herd behavior. And then when you do that, the grass comes back, the soil gets replenished, but because so much of the soil and the grasslands of the world are depleted already, that when it comes back, you now need more animals. So the irony here is that there aren't enough animals. In a healthy system, you're going to need more, and as the system improves, you then need even more. And so the areas that have been restored with regenerative grazing have 4 to 5 times the animal concentration as, let's say, the neighboring property, which is diminishing. So there are lots of elements of this which are sort of counterintuitive, but it's what's essential.
I want to bring up I just want to jump in real quick and ask a question. And I was reading an article the other day about some federal funding that is being given to a number of native tribes, mostly out in the Midwest and Southwest, to reintroduce bison, also known as buffalo, on large tracts of land. Would that also be part of this move towards moving around, regenerative grazing? Is that factored into the long-term scenario of carbon capture?
Well, yes, of course. Originally, all the ruminants were wild, and there were large herds of them, and they were predators, and so the whole thing with reintroducing bison is great, but then the larger question is like, okay, but what is going to be the ecosystem behavior? Are you also then bringing back wolves? In other words, how is the ecosystem itself with the bison going to behave? And so in a domestic ruminant situation, you are controlling it. So you have to replicate this behavior as if they were wild. But now when you have wild animals, you have to say, okay, well, how is that, quote unquote, being controlled? So you're saying, okay, we're also bringing back wolves.
Right.
We're going to have natural herding behavior because of the presence of predation. So the ideal situation is to have all of the above, to have wild ruminants and wild predators, and also domestic ruminants being managed in a way which replicates the beneficial impact of the wild ruminants with the predators. You can have all. It's not one or the other. And ironically, this is exactly what's happening in Africa, like at the Africa Center for Holistic Management, and in other places where the domestic ruminants are managed intentionally in a way to restore the landscape. And as a result, the wild ruminants and predators go there because it's the better land anyway.
Yeah.
And so now they just have to accept, okay, this is the situation. So our own grazing strategy has to be flexible so that we can also accommodate the behavior of the wild grazers. And so there's sort of two challenges here. One is how to manage the domestic animals in a way which improves the environment to then facilitate wild grazers and wild predators. And then the other trick is like, okay, and now how do we work in a way that's complementary with the wild grazers and predators? And that's a challenge, but it's a fun challenge. It's a good problem to have. And that's exactly now what's happening. For example, with Africa Center for Holistic Management. And in any of the places where this restoration has been going on, well, obviously, the wild animals are going to go there. And the predators are going to go there as well. And so the landowners are going to have to, adapt to that. Maybe they'll have to change their grazing schedule slightly. I don't know, but that's a good problem to have. That's ultimately where I see this is going, is we're going to have large herds of domestic animals moving in a way which is restorative, and then simultaneously you'll get an increase of the wild animals and the wild predators. And it'll be this interesting, somewhat unpredictable dance, if you will.
Right. The African example really has those wild animals built into the problem, because the people who live off their animal herds in Africa are obviously, each animal is valuable to them, and yet when they do improvement of their soil and have less seasonality in their growth, and more carbon has been sequestered in the soil, holding more water on the landscape and improving their water cycle. They still have to accommodate those wild animals that are saying, "Hey, this is Fat City. Let's go over here." Do you have a sense of how those wild animals, are there enough predators to keep those wild animals grouped up so that they are in fact doing what humans or what the buffalo used to do on the prairies here? Or is that a problem because the predators are missing in Africa as well?
In general, the wild animal population and the wild predator populations have been so decimated that it's a small part of what's actually happening in the ecosystem. But the irony is it helps bring it back. And it's a good problem to have. I'm not sure exactly how, when I say it's a good problem to have, in other words, having more wild grazers and predators and figuring out how to work with that is a good problem to have.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly how it's being managed at the Africa Center for Holistic Management, but certainly the wild grazers and predators are there. I mean, they're going to that property. I mean, everything, zebra, giraffes, lions, all of it. They're all going there on the property that's being restored with cows, so with domestic animals, versus they're not even in the wild parks anymore. They're not even in the state sponsored reservations, because it's all turning to desert.
Yeah, that's what happens
because there aren't enough of them, and there aren't enough wild animals. See, that's the point that just so many Westerners don't seem to understand. Soil in these semi-arid areas needs animals, and it needs a lot of them. And that's just the part we don't get. We're just so used to mismanagement of land and overgrazing. We don't understand that dry land soils actually require animals to just keep them from being deserts entirely. And then when they become deserts because of the human interference, we say, oh, it was overgrazing. Well, no, that wasn't the problem. It was actually under impact.
Yeah.
The impact itself was was changed. And so the undergrazing or overgrazing, that's simplistic.
Yeah.
It's not just the amount of grazing. Yeah.
My definition, I taught some grazing management when we had our fence business, and my definition of overgrazing is not moving the animals off of a piece of land before there is regrowth. So when you have regrowth and a ruminant eats it off again because the fastest growing plants are the ones that pop up first, you are suppressing. The plants don't like that being regrazed. It weakens them. And so you're selectively taking off all of the most actively growing plants in a landscape. And those active growing plants are what puts carbon back in the soil.
Right. Exactly. That's how the carbon gets in the soil. That's another misunderstanding. People think carbon gets in the soil from the top down, from dung or from leaves decaying or something. And certainly some percentage, but the most of it is happening sort of from the bottom up. It's the root exudates. It's going through the roots. So you need you need healthy and happy plants with nice deep roots, and you need perennial plants.
Yeah.
And so, we're soil for climate. Ultimately, it's about restoring soil. Well, it happens to be on most of the earth. The dominant type of soil is the ecosystem is a grassland ecosystem. That's where most soil carbon is in grassland ecosystems. And those ecosystems require grazing. They require grazing done a certain way.
Yeah.
Now, either it's wild grazing with prodigious herds of animals and predators, or it's a facsimile of that. And that's what holistic planned grazing is. It's trying to create that facsimile.
Yeah.
It may not be perfect, but it's the best thing we have. And ironically, it's actually the best way to save and to bring back wild grazers and predators. So
right.
That's how we got to the whole grazing side of this and the whole sort of debate around that. Is traditional grazing management deleterious? Well, of course it is. All traditional land agriculture management is bad. Growing soybeans and over hundreds of millions of acres in an industrial way is obviously bad. It doesn't matter if those soybeans are going to animals or to humans. That's not what should be there. What should be there is a healthy grassland. And how do you maintain a healthy grassland? Well, either it's going to be with lots of wild animals and predators, or it's going to be with domestic animals moved in this proper way, or it will be some combination. And ideally, that's what we're going to go toward, some combination.
Hey, Seth, tell us about the upcoming event at Middlebury.
Sure. Okay.
Before we let you go.
Yeah. So I'm very honored to be speaking at Middlebury College this coming Tuesday. So that will be March 14th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And the event is called The Role of Ruminants in Reversing Global Warming. Again, the role of ruminants in reversing global warming. How's that for a catchy title? And it's from, again, 6:30 to 8 p.m. March 14th. My bad there, and blah blah blah. Can I tell you the exact room? Sorry, I don't even have that in front of me right now. But anyway, the posters for it are up on the one of the main sponsors. Actually, is the Middlebury Food Co-op.
Oh,
if you just go
okay.
to the Middlebury Food Co-op website, you'll see a big notice of it right there.
And Seth, will that be just a live presentation, or will it also be streamed for folks who are a little further away?
Oh, hang on. By the way, I have more info for you. Bicentennial Hall, room 220.
Okay.
So room 220, Bicentennial Hall, at 6:30 p.m. Middlebury College next Tuesday. We have gotten the permission to stream it. So the plan now is to stream it into the Soil for Climate Facebook group.
Okay, we've got that. Hey, Seth, we're running low on time, and we really appreciate you giving just a thorough kind of analysis of where we could go with regenerative grazing and taking care of soil, and also to have another way to reduce carbon in the atmosphere. I'm going to sign off and thank you and give you and Henry the last word.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Seth, and thank you for the work you've done. I believe your Facebook followers are in the thousands. Have you got a number for that now? For
about 34.5 thousand, a little bit north of 34,000.
So it's a large megaphone to get this message out. And there is lots of information on that Soil for Climate, both their webpage and their Facebook page, including some technical studies to show that ruminants actually draw down way more greenhouse gases than they put up when they're being properly managed.
There you go. Right, because it's the whole ecosystem restoration, and there are two key parts of that. Let me just say this real quick. One is the methanotrophs in the soil. So these are methane metabolizing bacteria, but the other is the water vapor that gathers over a healthy grassland contributes to the breakdown of methane in the atmosphere.
Beautiful. All right. Well, those are the technical details, and I'll let our listeners dig into them rather than carrying on now. So thank you so much for joining us, and I wish you a great presentation, and we'll be watching it. And for those that are close by, they will be coming.
All right. Thanks again, Seth.
Right. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.